Hello! Today you find me in the midst of an upgrade. Yes, further upgrade to the power tower. I know. But it's going to take a while and there's lots to do. So today's episode is all about changing the AT PSU for an ATX. Let's take a look. So where once there was a PSU in the back, it's now been taken out. Here it is. Big chunky old thing. I think I said it on a previous video that it is working fine. I haven't had any issues with power issues, but it's clearly as old as the case is, probably about 20 years old, and in dire need of an upgrade. So I've unscrewed that from the back, and also unscrewed it from where the power switch goes, in order to change it. Also, the fascia's come off. I'll show you some shots of that with the awful dust that accumulated in there, because there was more in there than the rest of the case in total. And then we'll pop in the new PSU and switch. I also had a number of Molex adapters for the additional devices I've got in there, including a PSU fan that went on the 040. But I've got something else I'm going to be putting in the machine, so I may not require this. But that's for a later update. Let's get on with it. So what do we need to do in order to fill this rather big gap in the side that we now have? Well, first of all, one needs a PSU. This is the Corsair VS450. I've seen other people have used earlier versions of the same PSU, so I'm hoping this is going to do the job for me. That's all well and good. That'll provide power for devices, but what happens if you've got an early mediator that doesn't actually have the right connectors for ATX? Well, you get a cable adapter. This will basically provide Molex cables for the devices. It'll also give you the ability to power the motherboard, any devices plugged into the mediator, any accelerator card via the mediator, and it all comes in one tidy cable like this. It's also got a replacement power switch, because ATX power supplies and cases have a slightly different way of switching them on and off. So I've actually removed the existing, just try and get it around here, the existing switch from the back here. That would actually go through to this part of the front cover, so the new one will be screwed into place there, and then we'll provide the ability to switch the machine on and off. Now this PSU comes with a gaggle of cables. They're not all going to get used, because there's stuff for PCIe, there's SATA ones in there. They're all going to have to get trunks somewhere so they don't get in the way of operations. It's a nice unit, nice big fan on the top. Thermo controlled, so it should only come on when things get really hot. There's no monitor pass through at the back, not that I've ever used that, so that's not a problem. It's a hefty unit though, so let's get that screwed in. Comes supplied with the screws to mount it, so let's see if we all mount up correctly. The holes match, that's a plus, isn't it? Let's get that zoomed in slightly. Right, I'm going to use an electric screwdriver to mount this, because it's difficult doing this one-handed. You heard me. We may need to fast forward through this so that you can not just see me struggling to get this aligned. And it's all screwed in. There we go. That looks quite lovely, doesn't it? Right, now let's try and work out how we get the switch in. Well, first of all, this is the ATX power cable that would usually supply power to the motherboard of, you know, a PC or something along those lines. We're going to unclip that extra bit from the edge, because we don't need that. And then we get this, I was going to say rather lovely adapter cable from Amiga. It's an adapter cable. It does what it's supposed to do, and that just clips on like this. And now we have a wonderful connection between the two. So now let's mount this in the front of the case, and this will go into the mediator. Okay, one issue I've identified is that the cable that kind of goes in here doesn't necessarily line up with the switch in a way that will kind of give long-term stability. So I'm going to have a look at how the switch is connected to the original case version. I might be able to grab something off there to get it in there correctly. Okay, so in order to get the switch in place, I've had to remove the front fascia, and well, here we are. This is the switch in place. You can see I've removed this from the actual AT switch that was in there previously. So this is kind of mounted back and through. That's just so that there's enough space for that to be able to travel back and forth there. So hopefully that'll do the trick. It's a bit tight around the back. Let's just go around there. So hopefully that will be okay, but I guess we'll see in the long or short term. Since the PSU and the power switch are now wired up, let's give it a try. Well, the fan comes on, that's a plus, and it's whisper quiet. If you can hear anything else in the background, that'll be the hard drive for my Mac, but otherwise this is nice and quiet. Obviously it may kick in a bit more as things heat up, but I'm very happy with that so far. I've reattached my recapped A1200 motherboard to the back plane. As you can see, the power flyer is also attached with the ROMs in, and there it is clipped over the custom chip. Just need to reapply the trailing cable there to the correct pin on the IDE header for drive activity. Let's just get this back in the tower. Well, we've got a few cables to reattach to the motherboard now it's back. This is the reset switch that goes onto the power flyer, because where the power flyer is hooked up to the custom chip there, basically pressing the reset switch on the front of the case initiates a reboot. So this just goes back on there. Nice tight fit. Then we have the keyboard adapter, and this needs to just slot back into, there we go, into the keyboard ribbon connector. Again, that is very tight, so pardon the exertion. And then finally we have this connector here. This goes onto the floppy power connector and the motherboard power connector. Let's just run some power to the front of the case for the LEDs. Just slots on like that. I've temporarily reattached the mediator PCI bus board. The reason for that is it's going to be powering the A1200 motherboard via this connector here. That one. Via these two cables. So I do need to remove it once more in order to get to the power flyer to re-plug in all of the IDE cables onto that, but just for testing purposes I think we'll get this powered up just to make sure that the motherboard's okay with the new PSU. That's all plugged into the mediator now. One thing I will say is that there's not much leeway between this cable and the front of the case. It's very tight to get that in there, so there's a bit of stress on that cable. So it's actually quite tight between the power switch and the mediator. I hope that's not going to put too much stress on it. Okay, the moment of truth. Just ignore all the cables sticking out the top here. I've just put them there for just getting them out of the way. But power on. And it's a black screen, but there's a reason for the black screen. With the power flyer and the chips on there, I think there's a delay on there for it to wait for IDE devices, so we'll wait a bit longer I am confident this will actually boot to a kickstart screen for Migros. We just have to wait. Huzzah! See what I tell you. 3.1 ROM in there, so that's the additional delay introduced, as I said. But as you can see, I have a screen, which is such a relief. I have no idea how many times I've said it on this channel, but I'm not an electronics whiz. I usually deal with the software side of things rather than delving into the hardware. I'm all well and good plugging stuff in, but when it comes to tinkering, I'm not so great. And that's it. The PSU has been swapped. I'm amazed that worked first time. And dead chuffed as well, as you can imagine. I did not expect it to, because, well, we've just been through that, haven't we? But we've got a kickstart screen. The machine's working. From now on, I guess I'll be plugging in the hard drive and the CD-ROM drive and the SD card, just to get it back up to where it was previously. I'm then going to do a bit of a rebuild in terms of where I store things, how I store things, etc. Probably with a bit of a reconfigure of Workbench itself, just to ensure it's absolutely optimum in terms of performance, etc. I do have something new to plug in as well, but we'll go into that in a future episode. So thanks for watching. If you've got any questions about today's episode, why I did certain things, or any advice on what I've done hideously wrong that's going to cause that in the background to explode in a ball of flame, please leave a note in the usual place. And thanks for watching. Cheers!